guys, welcome back to another vlog. It's still raining outside and my car is still in the shop getting fixed. So we are going to be stationary in the house today. Maybe at most go to a coffee shop or something. Before I do anything else, I'm going to do a little workout on my bicycle. Let's get it. So basically what I've been doing is just editing today. I made a couple reels. I was just making a reel now. This up, have some of my boards out, have my ring light. So my car is still not fixed. It's still raining, so we're kind of in the same scenario. So I don't think I'm going to vlog anymore today. Pretty lucky that we have a dog now. Just cool to hang out with a dog. Hello, you want to be in the video? She's a very nice dog. Carly. Oh. I know you guys are dying for some action, as I am. So here's a couple of flat ground bodyboard tricks in my living room. I said I wasn't gonna vlog anymore, but I am still stuck in my house with this rain, and I am just staring forward. That actually matches the color of the floor and the dog, but not the guitar. So anyway, I just wanted to document my first time laying down on this and feeling what it feels like, because there's actually a very long backstory to why I wanted a board like this. I guess I'll tell it to you guys in short form right now. So basically the first time that I ever saw one of these boards was probably on the internet, actually. The first time that I ever saw one in person, I was surfing in town, and I was at Middles, I believe. You guys know where that is. I had a friend of a friend that paddled out on one. I was riding, I don't know what the heck I was riding. I was riding something crazy, some kind of crazy surfboard. Like, I think it was like a really old board. And he paddled out on his Alaia that he had made. And I was like, whoa, like I've never seen one of those in person. Like I had never actually touched one before. That was around the time where like the Wegners had started to make them, and it became like a little more like globally mainstream. If any of you guys remember that time period. So I asked him if I could take a wave. I tried to paddle for a couple waves and I didn't get any, but I always remember that experience, and that was a really beautiful board. And so after that, I was like, oh man, like I'd like to pick up like one of these boards. And mind you, at that time, my quiver was basically, I had one board that I bought that was new, that was like, it was like cheap, like epoxy board. I wanted some other like different shaped boards, and so I just would go into surf shops and I would just ask them like what their cheapest board was that they were selling secondhand. And so I picked up a bunch of like secondhand boards. I had a boogie board that I took out of the trash. It was one of those little poi pounder boards, and I had one fin, and that was pretty much my setup. And I would just surf like bowls, middles area, sometimes some other spots. When I was like crunched on time and I had to go to work, I would like surf walls, go like bodyboard, or just like swim around at walls and then go to work. So anyway, like I was just living my life. At that time, I was kind of seeing that like I had an opportunity that like if I wanted to ever go and leave, I was thinking that like I should probably do it. I was also super into the idea of me riding these boards, these wooden boards. I was looking at places that I could possibly go to like live abroad for maybe a few years or maybe forever, if it was good enough. I was looking at places that would be ideal to ride a board like that. And so as I was looking through different places, that was one of the reasons, not all of the reason, but one of the reasons why I chose Taiwan, because I like had this idea that like I was going to go to Taiwan and I was gonna like shape these boards and I was gonna like live there. That was my idea for like a very long period of time in the back of my head while I was doing other things like getting a college degree and like just like surviving. And it turns out that there is actually, I think he's an Italian guy and he lives on the east coast of Taiwan and he makes Alaias and Pipos and stuff. So I thought that that was like kind of interesting, but I never made it over to see him, and I was supposed to a couple times and it never worked out. As I was trying to navigate that culture and like I was going to school, I was working and doing a bunch of different stuff, I still had this idea in the back of my mind. And so I was trying to source the wood, which the wood that I wanted to use was Paulownia. And it was difficult to find pieces that were long enough to make an Alaia. And the largest pieces that I could find were like, I think they were like 4 feet long. I managed to get enough money to buy the wood, and then I bought the wood and I like pieced it together. Like, I'm not a very good craftsman. I stuck these pieces together with like super glue or something, and I let it like sit outside, literally just like on the street, because like I'm living in an apartment and I can't do it in the apartment. And so I leave it like somewhere like in a corner like on the street, and I let it dry. So like I finally put the pieces of wood together, and they seem like they're all set. And I'm like, okay, it's not even shaped yet, right? And it's just like a little rectangle. And I'm like, all right, I'm ready, let's go. And like where I had stashed it to dry, like it was right next to the beach. And the waves were like pretty perfect for just like trying it out, maybe standing up. And go onto the beach. I can see that the weather is like changing pretty rapidly. And in Taiwan, like there's some pretty crazy thunderstorms and stuff. It's kind of similar to New Jersey. So the front is like moving in. And so like I get out there and I'm like, oh my God, like here we go. Let's go for a wave. I don't get it. It was a second wave. I go, I catch it. I'm like hearing thunder in the distance. Get up. And I stand up and I'm like, oh my God, I'm standing up. This is exactly as cool as I thought it was gonna be. And then like a minute later, the board just snaps. And I'm like, no. The board snapped, and a little later on, I ended up actually making a couple of pipos from marine ply. Very rudimentary designs. Like I cut it with like a handsaw, like barely just cutting off the edges. Then life got busy. I got busy with school. I got busy with working and friends and socializing. There was a long period of time in between the beginning of my stay in Taiwan and the end where I didn't surf at all. I wasn't in the water at all. Almost a decade passed, and I was, my body was getting like worse and worse. I was sick all the time. Like I was living in this inland factory town. I was watching a lot of surf content online, and I was watching a bunch of vlogs and stuff, and I was kind of remembering how my life used to be. And I was like, oh man, like I think I was like happier then. I was definitely happier. Part of it was that like when I stopped surfing, it was because like I had to buy all these things and I had to travel to these places to go surf, and I just didn't have the money to carry out my plan of trying to get residency in Taiwan and do the surfing thing. In reality, I think it was possible, but in my mind, at that point, I was like, okay, this is a sport for people who have money and I don't. So I need to stop, right? And I just stopped. And I think that was a terrible decision, but probably one that I will remember forever. So fast forward to like the last like year and a half, 2 years of my Taiwan stay, I decided that I was gonna start bodyboarding again, because I was pretty out of shape at that point, more out of shape than I am now. So I started going to the beach. I started actually filming on another channel that I had. It's like some short little vlogs and stuff. And I was doing some music stuff. I was getting creative. I was getting back in the water, and I was getting a little bit healthier, I think. I had some health problems, like I had to have my tonsils removed. Like I was getting sick every month. It was like a bad scene. I went back to the original city where I was living at when I first got into Taiwan, and I started to surf there regularly again. I eventually got back into stand-up surfing. At that point, I was moving, I was saving money. It was very difficult for me to access a board for me to buy for myself. A lot of logistics, like when you don't have a car, you can't bring boards onto the train and stuff. It's kind of a complicated situation in Taiwan if you don't have a car. As soon as I started surfing again, I remembered my dream that I had had before of having these boards and being able to ride them, having lots of different boards and stuff like that. I had been on the fence about leaving Taiwan for quite a few years at that time. I told my one friend, who was one of the first friends that I met when I first came into Taiwan, and I said, like, I don't know if I'm gonna stay, like I'm thinking about leaving or whatever. And he said, before you leave, you need to remember why you came. And I always remember that, because it is important to remember why you came, right? And then things make more sense. because I think that sometimes we start to do things and then life happens and you forget why you started to do something in the first place. Why I went to Taiwan in the first place, I kind of felt like I might get stuck in Hawaii, and like, not that that's a bad thing, but I wanted to, while I was young and while I wasn't married and while I didn't have kids, to kind of like go out and see the world like a little more before I settle down. Like maybe I could find a place that was like Hawaii but a little different. I remembered all that stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta make one of these boards. And so I tried to source the wood, and I still couldn't find wood that was long enough, but I was able to find a put together plank of wood that was long enough to make a pipe bow. And so that's the pipe bow that you've seen in some of my videos before if you watch my Instagram or whatever. I just bought some hand tools, and I sat in my bathroom, I closed the door, because the bathrooms in Taiwan are like, they're all waterproofed. I would like do the woodworking in the bathroom, and then I just hosed down the whole thing. Sat in this bathroom, probably like 100 degrees, handsaw, like hand sanding this thing down, sitting like on the toilet. I was sitting on the toilet, and then I had the board in front of me, like kind of sanding it and cutting it. And when I finished the board, I was like, wow, like I really just made that board. Finally made it happen. Fast forward, I decided to leave Taiwan. I made the pipe bow. I wrote it there, I wrote it here. I still didn't get my hands on an Alaia. I contacted a couple shapers, and I didn't hear back from any of them. I tried to look around here to see if I could source any paulownia to make it, or any other kind of wood that might work. I just opted to first go and just buy some foam boards just so I could have some boards to ride. Those were also a kind of board that I was interested in. And yet again, the Alaia got put on the back burner. So fast forward to a couple days ago, I knew there was going to be a board swap, and the weather was bad, and so I didn't end up going. Turns out that the person who sold me the Alaia also didn't end up going because of the rain. So on the day after the board swap, I open up my phone and I check Marketplace, because I'll do that a lot just to like see if there's anything like interesting. And the first thing I see is this Alaia. Like, whoa, like what? Like, and I'm like, no way, this is crazy. And then I look at the seller, and it's my old neighbor. So this is a guy that I see when I go surf in Manasquan. Turns out that he actually has one that he made with his son, who is my friend. I've only surfed in the winter once in New Jersey for half a season, and it was with his son. And if I can remember correctly, I think it was either him or one of his friends that gave me like booties and a wetsuit and stuff and a hood. And yeah, that was just like a really cool experience. So anyway, I went over, I checked out the board, I liked it. Not made from paulownia, it's made from Douglas fir, but it looks good. Looks like it was made very well, and so now it's at my house. This might be a little boring for you guys, but I just wanted to document my experience with this, because this has been a very long journey for me to get here. I have the Alaia just laid out on the floor on top of a yoga mat, and I just wanted to lay on it, but I wanted to have a video of me doing it for the first time, because it's been a long time coming. All right, here she is. Sweetie. This feels so sick. A little confused where you're supposed to lay on it. I remember it being very hard to paddle when I tried that one many years ago. I gotta work at my crouch, that's for sure. So I wonder if this board is like when you ride stand-up bodyboard. Like, do I have to have one foot on the outside rail? In all honesty, I'm probably gonna be riding this prone at first. Just cruising. Thank you for listening to that story. That might have been boring, but I had to do that story. And also thank you to Dave and Mr. Terranova for letting me have this board. I know that you guys worked on it together, and it means a lot to me that you guys would let me have it. I will definitely cherish it.